Dan Cloris, we knew how we were promoting it was going to get somebody's attention. But I honestly thought it was going to be someone like Reverend Jerry Falwell, rather. I thought it was going to be some lunatic preacher would come out against us. I was sort of baiting the press to pick it up. I said banned in 49 states, but we had done it in 5 states at that point, so that would add it up to 54 states. No one ever asked me about that. I think, going back to those days, in a lot of ways they were fun. What I find very different about Combate Americas than the early days of the UFC is all the energy around Combate is very positive. People thank me, excuse me, they thank me for the opportunity. Countries feel a great deal of pride being involved in this sport. We're creating, a real business in the U.S. in creating jobs in the U.S. through Combate Americas. We are getting great press because we're helping people build a career for themselves, build a business for themselves. We're picking the best new athletes, and I think that everything we're doing is so positive, it feels very differently than it did 24 years ago.
Well, you mentioned the Gracie name and being involved with the Gracies way back when and starting this whole UFC MMA explosion, this whole craze. It's very interesting to me that Combate Americas, which you're the CEO of, decided to go international, per se, with so many Brazilians that are known for MMA, and that someone else didn't see this vision. Were you surprised at all that none of the others, whether you talk UFC, Bellator, Strikeforce, whoever, didn't see that vision of where you all are taking Combate Americas, and geez, look at the success you're having in this short period of time?
Jim, I got a phone call last week from the TV channel in Brazil that launched the UFC, not Globo, Hedgie TV. They want to have us on in Brazil, which I found very ironic. Jim, these are some of the best questions I've been asked in this recent run. How long have you been covering the sport? I mean, your questions are really good questions. How long have you been doing this?
I've been probably, not long actually, maybe about 3 years, 4 years.
Because you have an overview of the business that I think a lot of people covering MMA don't necessarily have. They're more involved. Who's fighting on Saturday? I like talking to you about this because I like to talk, and clearly I like to talk. But I love talking about Combate, and these are great questions. I just wanted to say that. I'm surprised in a way and surprised not that people didn't look at South America. When the UFC started 24 years ago, essentially it was Royce Gracie just choked everybody out, right? That's really what the first 3 or 4 tournaments were. Royce Gracie just choking everybody out. And the only way that I thought I would combat that, I mixed up my pronunciation. The only way I would combat that, not combate that, the only way that I could stop that was to bring in big Olympic and U.S. College athletes, wrestlers, right? They were the only ones that could defend against Royce. All the striking arts were just taken off their feet and choked unconscious. So I brought in the Mark Schultz and the Dan Severins and the Mark Coleman's. Mark Schultz was an Olympic gold medalist. I brought him back to my point that those early days, were phenomenal. Mark Schultz he won the gold in the Olympics. He was competing in the UFC. But anyway, the early days of the UFC were really setting the DNA for the fight style. And that fight style is a grappling fight style, whether it's jiu-jitsu or Olympic wrestling. What I wanted to flip that in Combate, right? The martial art of Mexico and U.S. Hispanics and a lot of South America, and certainly Puerto Rico, the martial art there is boxeo. It's boxing. So if the UFC is a grappling sport where the grapplers learn to punch, Combate is a punching sport where the fighters learn to grapple. So it kind of flips it. So I think that's what makes our fights so much more exciting than most MMA. right? We say mucho más acción, much more action is our MMA. And you see that 81% of combate fights end in a finish. The next best average on that is the UFC at 51%. So that means, 31%, whatever the arithmetic is, almost a third of our fights, end in a finish more than the UFC does. We don't go to the judges. Our guys want to finish it. So I think that if you want to focus on Hispanic fans, Spanish-speaking fans, South American fans, U.S. fans, you've got to put up a little bit more exciting style of MMA. And that's, I think, really why we're getting in there. The style is more exciting and more fitting for fans that are coming over maybe from boxing. Look, I love GSP. I think he's a great, example of MMA, right? Skilled, dedicated, a real gentleman. But I saw his last fight 4 years ago. So you've got kind of an older generation representing the UFC. My guys are all 22 years old. And if we look at, again, when we're looking at our ratings, the UFC's average viewer is now 47. 47. That means they're gray haired. They probably got top bellies. My viewers are 27. I think combate is not just important for Spanish-speaking sports fans. I think we're the future of the sport. And Copa Combate, you will see a lot of the press has been saying our recent signing of Eric Perez Goyito is our most important signing because he's coming off a lot of wins in the UFC and hasn't really caught on with non-Hispanic fans. Goyito is an important signing, but I'll tell you, the 8 guys in my tournament are the future. Goyito is right now. He's a great fighter, great competitor. But I think when you watch the Copa, and I hope you're going to watch, Jim, and you're invited to come, if you watch, you will see the future of MMA in that tournament.